Recession. Recession 2022. Is it here? And how should we be prepared for a recession? We're going to talk about it in this video. We're also going to dial it back and talk about what a recession actually is, the technical terms, how we know a recession is here and or coming based on some things that are happening in our country and in our world. And we're also going to talk about some historical recessions and how long they lasted, what came after these recessions, and how we can best prepare for post recession. So, with all that being said, go ahead and hit the like button already here. I know you're going to like what I have for you. Now, the actual definition of a recession is a period of temporary decline, okay, which trade and industrial activity are reduced. Now, generally speaking, it's identified by a fall in GDP in two successive quarters. So, right here, that is the actual definition of a recession. So far, we had a decline in GDP here in the United States and pretty much across the whole world in the first quarter. And we will officially know that technically we're going to be in a recession, in my opinion, by July 1st, because that will be the second successive quarter of a fall in GDP. At least it's looking like that. Now, will the government actually come out and say, hey, we are in a recession? It's official. Oh my gosh. Probably not. They probably try to tame those words a little bit. My guess is we'll probably hear it sometime in August, late this summer, that, okay, yeah, recession is hit. Even though as we sit right here in June, gas is over $5 where I am in the US and over $7 in some places like California, and it's not getting any better. Now, how else do we know that we are getting close to a recession? Well, here's one reason. Silicon Valley braces for tech pullback after a decade of decadence. Veteran venture capitalists and CEOs are predicting an economy-wide recession, and Silicon Valley is bracing for this. So these are very big indicators, because if big companies start cutting their employees, like they're doing at Tesla, like they're doing at Coinbase, like they're doing at Gemini in the crypto space, that is a telltale sign that things aren't moving in the right direction and a recession could be upon us, right? Now, this article from CNBC says the recession will actually hit in the first half of 2023 and that the Dow is heading lower. Now, this was a CFO survey done by CNBC, and amid high inflation that has become the number one business risk across the world, not a single chief financial officer surveyed by CNBC thinks a recession can be avoided at this point. Think about that. Every single chief financial officer surveyed by CNBC thinks a recession is going to happen. Now, the macroeconomic view of CFOs informs a bearish stock market outlook, with most expecting the Dow Jones Industrial Average to fall below 30,000 before reaching a new high, which would represent a decline of 9% from its current level and an 18% from its decline, or 18% decline from its 2022 high. So, with all that being said, how do we play these markets? Well, dollar cost averaging is, of course, a really good strategy to deploy, because you're not trying to time the bottom, right? You're just slowly getting into the market. Now, I want to jump into this article. This was a great article done by Business Insider. All right, so they get into what a recession is, right? A period of contraction in a country's economy signaled by a reduction in gross domestic product, or GDP, and rising unemployment, among other factors. So I want to scroll right here. I got a few things here highlighted that I want to hit on here. Okay, so this says, basically, when they are determining a recession, they start by measuring a variety of indicators such as this: decline in real GDP, which we've already seen that in Q1. We expect to see that in Q2, a decline in real income. Now, that is going to slowly happen. If you go back and look at all the stay-at-home jobs, a lot of people took these new and flashy stay-at-home jobs for more money. Those won't last, in my opinion. They're flash in the pans, right? Because we had all this influx of money that was fake money being printed by the government. Well, yeah, look at me. I got my new job, and it's this great job. I get to sit at home, and now instead of making 60K, I'm making 80K, and it's a stay-at-home job. Those types of people, I hate to say it, will probably lose their jobs first, because they just got into those jobs, and these companies can't afford to keep paying new hires more money. All right, so we'll continue to monitor that. And the next is rise in unemployment. Now, there was a little bit of a moment there where we had too many jobs, right? But the tides are turning now, especially when we see big companies start cutting their employees. Stagnation of industrial production and retail sales. People stop spending, right? That will be a big telltale sign that recession is near. How about a decline in consumer spending that kind of goes along with that in retail sales? We are starting to see that slowly but surely, that people are spending less. How you can best prepare for this recession if it comes: start spending less now, start saving more, start finding ways to have more cash on hand that you hopefully can inject into the market, whether it's the crypto market or stock market, whichever you prefer, because then you're ahead of the game. And guess what? If a recession doesn't come, well, you just save some money. I mean, there's no harm or foul on that, right? That's a good thing. So if we scroll on down, we could see here there are some interesting tidbits here I want to talk about as it relates to the cycles and what causes a recession. So, what actually causes a recession? Well, economic shocks, right? So, the latest example of this is reaction to the COVID-19 outbreak, right? An unpredictable event that causes widespread economic disruption. How about loss of consumer confidence? This is when consumers worry about the state of the economy and they react in spending less and save whatever money they can, because close to 70% of GDP depends on consumer spending. High interest rates. This makes it expensive for consumers to borrow money. We're seeing that right now. This means that consumers are less likely to spend, especially on major purchases like homes or cars. Now, the housing market is interesting because it's still, doing pretty well. However, I believe it's got to pull back here in the coming months if we believe we're getting into a recession. How about deflation? Now, this is the opposite of inflation. This is when product and asset prices fall because of a large drop in demand. We haven't seen that yet, but a lot of economists are predicting we will see this. Consumers see this downward trend and they wait for the prices to fall, further reducing demand. How about asset bubbles? The prices of investments like tech stocks in the dot-com era or real estate before the Great Recession, they rise rapidly, far beyond the fundamentals. That the fundamentals would suggest. These high prices then are supported only by artificially inflated demand, which eventually dissipates, and then the bubble bursts. At this point, people lose money and confidence collapses, and this is how an asset bubble occurs. Now, how long do recessions usually last? This is important, and I want to add a couple tidbits onto this. Recessions can be a good thing if you're looking at this thing holistically. In the short term, recessions suck. They're terrible, right? For everybody involved, especially the people struggling, right, to live paycheck to paycheck. But long term, it provides a lot of opportunity for economic growth. It also provides a lot of opportunity for new businesses, new ideas, and new people to flourish during tough times. Now, the average post-World War II recession lasts about 11 months. Okay, on average, a recession lasts about a year. So depending on when we start, we can expect to see this type of environment for about a year, at least historically speaking. Now, what's interesting is what comes after this. Pretty much every single recession that we've experienced, like the Great Recession, which this happened December 2007 to 2009. Then we had the dot-com recession, March 2021 to November 2021. We had the Gulf War recession in the 90s. We had, many other recessions that date back into time. But usually what happens after these times, after these recessions, is huge, huge economic growth. So on average, after a recession concludes, we usually see a decade or so, 10 years or so, of huge economic growth. So that is a positive, right? That is something that we love to see. And that is why a recession, in a way, is good, because it kind of resets everything. It forces a hard reset, right? You ever have like a computer that is acting up on you and you just basically reboot it? That's kind of like a recession for the economy, right? It's kind of like a reboot. And then once it's rebooted, man, it fuels the fire for this huge, huge run up and decade of growth. So that is what I've got for you here in the video. I know this is a little bit longer video. Let me know what you think about all this. Hopefully you glean something from it, you gain something from it, and let me know your thoughts about all this down below in the comment section. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you, and hopefully you come back very soon. Take care, everybody.